Yeah, thanks Ricky, thanks Z Prime. Really appreciate being here for the 10th anniversary of ETS. Good morning, thought leaders. Really exciting too with this anniversary to also say that DNV is celebrating our 125th anniversary of being in the United States. We are unique in that we are 100% owned by a Norwegian research and development foundation, also with the DNV title. And really today I wanted to mention a few other things, because one of the things that makes us unique and one of the things we're able to do is to do our own independent research. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of that research, both some that we've published recently, some that's actually right in the works that we're about to publish. But really it all centers for me around that equitable energy transition. And we've heard a lot about it all throughout this conference, from day one, yesterday, and into today. And really excited to follow Hank and such a great mission and really thinking about that. And at DNV, really our purpose, and our purpose has not changed for 150 years, which is to safeguard life, property, and the environment. Last year, I really focused on kind of these three key words of what it would take to create an equitable energy transition and to leverage this once-in-a-century moment to actually change the situation for millions and millions of folks in the US and around the world. And so those three words were intentional, accountable, and radical, meaning we have to be really intentional. Things like Justice 40, seeing what we've seen in the IRA and the IIJA, it's really hitting right on that intentional factor. Being accountable, meaning if we don't hit goals, what happens? We just heard Hank talk about Paris and those agreements. If we miss those goals, climate change happens, but there is no other consequence. But us as leaders, we have to have those commitments and have to drive those home. And radical just means we can't, I think it was a couple of different folks on day one really said it, we can't necessarily solve today's critical problems with the tools of yesterday. And really, if we're gonna also address systemic racism, systemic inequities, it really means we have to change our way of thinking and do things differently in order to address those. Today's thing really builds on that, and really what I want to talk about is putting those words into action. It's great to have the goals, it's great to have those words that you can remember, even without slides, and then really understand what's it going to take it to the next level. And so really what we've seen here are several examples that I'll talk about already at this conference, and really asking ourselves, how do we make sure that there's true action? So one of the terms I like to use, I get to work with lots of brilliant people, with our customers and our own colleagues, lots of engineers, data scientists, social scientists, really brilliant people. But what we have to avoid is what we call analysis paralysis. Just looking at the problem over and over again, and then nothing really happens. So we're creating 1,000 pages of metrics and never really knowing what kind of impact did we have. So really want to talk about that today. So really bringing these two things together, what I've really seen are really key examples, but I want to first talk a little bit about some research we've done recently and link those actually back to a lot of the things we've already heard at this event. So one of the things we do every year is the Energy Transition Outlook. We forecast what's going to happen with carbon emissions in all energy systems as we look out to 2050. We've included in this latest iteration things like the spatial competition for offshore wind, aquaculture, all these things that we're going to see into the future, and all these things that are critical to maintaining our ocean environment. We all share one ocean system, we all share one atmosphere. So we have to all be in this together. So I think the One Planet Alliance is just a fabulous thing to follow up, and as DNV's history is all rooted in maritime, I also love the Peace Boat. But really what I wanted to bring up was a more recent thing that we've just published called our Industry Insights Report. This is the culmination of doing interviews with over 1,000 energy professionals, a couple hundred in the US and Canada, but also around the world. And really the themes that came up through that came right back to something we were talking about in 2014 and 2015, which was the energy trilemma. There was a whole discussion about it on day one, and we've heard that theme resonate all throughout the different sessions. And really, if you just as a reminder, that trilemma is that as there's the competing priorities of creating this clean and green system, making it reliable, and secure, and then also making it affordable. And so there's these pressures on each of those ends that, yeah, we can go clean and green, but maybe it's not affordable anymore, or we can make it really safe and reliable, but that's really going to hold back how fast we can make it clean and green. And so really, there's great insights in that. I'm not going to go super into detail. You can go download the report, and I can share a copy with you. But really, what was interesting is building on that, we had to make sure that we really think about how are we going to make this equitable. We've heard lots of talk about working with community-based organizations, centering the community, and really flipping planning on its head and bringing those voices into the room. But one of the things that we decided to do was let's take that to the next level. Let's do the research focusing on those communities, on the community-based organizations, and on the individuals that are the ones that we are trying to address with things like Justice 40. And so what that really revealed, and what I'll go over a few key takeaways, it's really interesting because the things that resonated, the things that came up is this energy trilemma is actually maybe the 5th, 6th, and 7th priorities for the folks that you talk to when you go and talk to our neighbors, maybe on the other side of I-35 if you're here, or maybe if it's in East Oakland in the Bay Area where we're located, where my office is located. And so really what came up is that trilemma is a different trilemma. It's more about the systemic problems. It's about poverty, it's about housing, and it's about healthcare. And so if you think about that and you think about trying to center those voices, how do you bridge the gap if we as collective thought leaders in the energy space are trying to address these problems in our communities and in our surrounding areas? And so one of the really good things though that we did here there are great examples of specific utilities and specific individuals taking it to the next level, really being intentional, really being accountable, and being radical. And so what we saw on day one, we heard from Con Ed, we heard from Ameren, we heard about specific programs about returning citizens, those who were formerly incarcerated. We talked about there were specific programs to bridge the gaps in the bureaucracy that it takes for small businesses to participate in this clean energy economy that is growing rapidly. Utilities themselves have to hire to replace an aging workforce. At the same time, we need a lot more jobs to build the renewables, build the batteries, and to build the EVs and infrastructure that we all know it's going to take to achieve those energy goals. And so really kind of coming back to this was this notion, and to try to put a little bit finer point on it, one of the direct quotes was, talking to people in these communities, it was, when you think about the trilemma and reliability, it's there has to be zero downtime or very fast recovery when there is. But people have gone a week or more with no power, not because of a storm, not because of climate change, not because of a bad transformer, but literally because they had to make the choice. They had to choose to feed their kids or keep the lights on. And so that's the gravity of the problem. That's what we have to really think about when we're trying to address these problems. It's not just affordability of the energy, it's all these other problems on top of that. But we heard great examples also from a lot of the public power sector, from SMUD, Austin Energy, and CPS. We've heard about specific partnerships with those local community organizations, not just the faith-based organizations or those in the community, but the actual health department, the actual housing authorities, those that are directly engaged in these most critical problems. And so really, it kind of gets back to, okay, how are we going to build on this and really take action? And so really what rose to the top and what was really encouraging is we have seen lots of utilities make specific plans around how are they going to engage with community-based organizations or CBOs. And really that quickly rose to the top. It was clearly the pathway that the people themselves were telling us, this is who you need to go to, this is who we trust. We in some cases, they might trust the utility, but they don't trust the regulator of the utility and that back and forth. So really, that's really their visibility and what they see, and they don't see necessarily all the other things that the utilities are doing. But if that message is coming through the trusted partner, through the organizations that they work with all the time, that's addressing their trilemma, then they're going to listen. Now they're at the table for that people-based or community-based planning, and that's how we can move faster down an equitable energy transition pathway. And then another thing that I really wanted to bring up, and back to my thing about analysis paralysis is, from all these things, we've seen lots of different metrics. There's lots of different definitions of what even is equity or what is an equitable energy transition. But really, if you, again, talk about and recenter the thinking and kind of flip things around, it's not about a metric. These community organizations and the people themselves, they don't want to hear about the metrics. And I went from an index of 3.8 to 5.7. We've made a lot of progress really fast. They want to hear the stories. They want to hear about the impact to their own neighbors and to the people, their relatives, the people they know and love. And so really making sure that not only do you center these people in these organizations, CBOs, into your planning efforts, but also coming back and listening to those stories and then promoting and sharing those stories, the stories of impact, the stories that actually I didn't have to make that choice of whether or not to I'm going to get disconnected, but I'm making the choice to buy the medicine or to buy the food for my family. It's taking that to the next step and providing that support and having those stories of impact. So really, again, I'm really fortunate, again, to be here before you talking about an equitable energy transition. I'm really excited about some of the examples that I've already heard about at ETS over the last couple of days. And I also want us to really build on what Hank just said, and it's really about that alliance. It's great that each of these organizations is doing each of these different things, but the only way we're going to get to these really big, bold goals is to do it together. So keep making those connections at this event, keep meeting new people and finding new ways to make those partnerships. And remember, let's make sure that we don't, we need to do the research, we have to do the analysis to make sure that these things are going to work. But the only way we're ever going to achieve things like Justice 40 or things like an equitable energy transition is if we rethink that my trilemma is not necessarily the trilemma of these organizations and these companies or these communities. And so again, really thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. And again, let's go do it now. Let's take action. Let's get out of analysis paralysis.